everybody. Welcome to Soapbox. I'm so happy to have you all here watching tonight. I will have to say that we're going to have an interesting show tonight. I have a lady named Lisa Thomas with us. She's with the Sierra Nevada Geoengineering Awareness. And she's got a lot of good information and hopefully can enlighten some of us that don't know a whole lot about the subject. I also want to go ahead and get our positive vibes to our underwriters tonight. That would be Pieces Pizza. They're located on 21st between Capitol and L. And they have absolutely divine pizza. I recommend them highly, and I especially love their sun-dried tomato and feta cheese pizza. It's great. You have to try it. And also want to thank James Israel, who is the creator of Humor Times. It's a wonderful political satire magazine that you can get with the subscription. You should go online and check it out to see if it might be something of interest to you. And there are yearly subscriptions to be had. So if you have some gifts coming up, might be something you want to consider. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And I want to thank you so much for coming here and enlightening us on this subject. It seems to be a growing issue right now. I think that a lot more people are starting to listen and kind of at least be open to the thought of what this is all about. So maybe you can kind of give us a little background about how you got involved in this and what your level of just your knowledge in this and how much of this time you put into it and how it's working out.
Well, certainly, thank you for having me on the show and for the opportunity for both our organization and the organizations that I'm working with. Our ability to get this out, on stations like this is fantastic. But you're doing such a service to the people who are listening, the people who are watching, when you bring subjects like this to the forefront, because this is being kind of hidden. It's coming into the mainstream in articles as a proposal, and that's how it's being rolled out. And we want to bring out the truth about it because this is already being done, and people are not being given a choice about this. And I certainly didn't start out figuring that I would donate, hours of my time working on such an issue. I had been working on another environmental issue. It was an ocean conservation issue, and I spent a lot of time in Sacramento working on that and online trying to raise awareness. And it was about a 2.5-year campaign, and when it was over, I was pretty tired, just ready to, settle back a little bit and get things done at home, work in my garden. And but I was still very much aware of environmental issues, and I watched a symposium that somebody had sent me, another activist friend, on. It was a symposium in Berkeley on climate change, and about halfway through it, Jane Long of Lawrence Livermore Laboratory did a talk on something she called solar radiation management, geoengineering, and she discussed it as if it were a far-off proposal, the concept being that jets would spray this sulfuric acid out of them and create a haze over the planet that would slow down the effects of climate change by cooling the planet, keeping a certain amount of solar radiation from coming and hitting us on the planet. And I remember thinking when I heard that, I can't even imagine this happening, how horrible it would be. One of my first thoughts was, well, at least there's something that could be done if there were a wide-scale planetary emergency, but how awful it would be to live during those times.
Did they think that was going to be helping the situation with the global warming?
Well, this was the proposal. This is what she was saying in this. And so in 2012, I saw jets flying past the area that I lived, but it just didn't seem that abnormal. It kind of caught my attention. And then my mom and I came down to Auburn, and we live up in Nevada County, and she was in a doctor appointment, and it took a long time. She was in there for about 2.5 hours, and I just kept watching the sky, and it was so strange to me because it was hazy, and it was August, and we'd lived here at that point for about 6 years, and what really struck me when we moved from the East Coast to California, was that all summer long the sky was blue, just plain blue with no clouds, nothing. And it was amazing because having grown up and lived in the East Coast for 40 some years, it blew me away. I just would lie in the pool in the summer and just look up at the sky and it would be great. And you knew exactly what the weather was going to be the next day. So when it was hazy on that August day, it really struck me that this is really odd. So I'm out in the parking lots in Auburn that day, just looking and seeing these planes flying back and forth and back and forth, and the sky was turning white, and they were spraying something out of them. And then I watched where there was this hole near the sun, and it was supposed to be about 106 degrees that day, and these planes just were going back and filling in the hole. And I watched the temperature, and it didn't go above 96, and I stood there in those parking lots thinking, oh my God, they're doing it. They're experimenting with this. We've hit that point. So I kind of forgot about it. I mentioned it to a friend, and he said, you know what, don't even go there. Don't even talk about this. People will think you're crazy. So several months went by, and then we were working for somebody who actually works for the Air Force. And he said, while we were working, he said, I don't know what's going on with my gardens, whether it's chemtrails or HAARP or what it is. And I said, is any of that stuff real? And he said, you bet it is. And I thought, wow. And so still, I still didn't want to quite go there. And then one day in April of 2013, they came over my house and started flying back and forth and whiting out the whole sky. And it was pretty hot. It was abnormally hot, and they came back the next day. And that was April 13th of 2013 and the 14th. And by the end of the 14th, I couldn't breathe. I was struggling to breathe, and I was having problems. My heart was beating erratically, and I became really concerned that there was an experiment going on. So I wrote to one of the main scientists involved in this. That's David Keith. He's now at Harvard. He's known as the Harvard geoengineering scientist now. And I wrote to him, and I said, I'm not even remotely the conspiracy theorist type, but I think there's an experiment going on in our area. And he had written an article along with Parsons, I can't remember his first name, down in UC San Diego, who they both said that they wanted legislation around this. They didn't want it to go off, just without somebody legislating what was going on. And so I wrote to them thinking that they truly wanted that, and only to find out that he seemed to be, in his reply, trying to throw me off track. This is how you can be so sure there's a grand conspiracy going on. And I thought, I said I'm not that kind of person at all. And it seemed like he was just trying to get me to shut up and go away, which made me research even more. And I've been researching ever since, and the planes have been coming back ever since and whiting out the sky. It was stepped up in 2013 significantly from what I could see with other people. And I started making a slideshow of what was going on all over the country, and then I realized it was all over the world, and I was angry. My kids are breathing this stuff. Everybody's kids are breathing this stuff, and I could barely function that summer. It was horrible. I had to stay inside almost the whole summer. So, I met Kathy, and we formed Sierra Nevada Geoengineering Awareness up in Nevada County, and we've been building in numbers. We've been meeting for a year consistently, once a month. And we've got about 20 people at our meetings now, but we're forming together with other groups, and we formed a coalition. And we're having a rally in front of the Capitol in January on the 13th. Because we're pushing back on the legislators and saying enough is enough. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy. Yeah. And it's just this grand experiment that's happening at our expense and at the expense of the planet.
Well, it's really hard for a lot of people to grasp, because it's like we need more evidence, I guess is what it is. Where's the evidence to show that this is happening and it is poisoning our planet? In what manner is it happening? Because a lot of people aren't going to just understand that there's planes flying around and there stuff is coming out of them, and not make a connection that it's a little different than your norm. So what do we have to grasp onto to point at this being a really possibly horrible issue?
Well, one of the first things that I noticed was on the ponds in my backyard. I have one in the front and one in the back, and they're small. They're the plastic shell type thing. You fill them with your water. And I noticed within a couple of weeks of the spraying that there was this metallic substance building up on them. I also noticed metallic stuff on the leaves on some of the trees. I even brought a guy from the government out, from the USDA. And he was pretty concerned about what he was seeing. And I explained to him what I thought might be happening. And on the ponds, this metallic stuff started, this film was developing. And so I had it tested. First I tested the front pond. And the test came back with 830 parts per billion of aluminum, which is, on the grand scheme, in the grand scheme, it's not that much aluminum, but it doesn't belong there, and neither did barium, and that was showing up, and so was strontium. That's what I tested for. And those are the metals that are consistent with geoengineering patents for solar radiation management. So I became pretty concerned, and I could see the aquatic bugs, the aquatic insects dying on the surface of the pond, and I was really concerned about what I was seeing. And then it built up in the back pond, so I had that tested. And when I got my test results for the first one, I said to the woman in the lab, she said, well, what did you put in the, it's probably from the soil in the pond. I said, there's no soil, it's a plastic-lined pond. And she seemed a little taken aback, and she said, well, what did you fill the pond with? That probably had aluminum and barium and strontium in it. And I said, I used my well water. She said, well, send me a sample of that. So I did, and had that tested. And that had no aluminum, no barium, and quite a bit less strontium. So strontium is actually found in the water in Nevada County, so I don't test for that anymore, but aluminum and barium is not typically found in those quantities, and should definitely not be in my ponds if it's not in the well water that I put into the ponds. So then I did rainwater, and I was still getting aluminum and barium. At one point, my father said, well, there's a newspaper article saying they're using silver iodide to seed clouds. So I tested for silver iodide. There was no silver iodide in that rainstorm, but there was plenty of aluminum and barium in that rain. So I think altogether I've done 6 or 7 tests, and I'm not the only one. There have been people all over the place who've done this, and consistently the results are coming back with abnormally high levels of aluminum and barium.
How harmful is that to us and our soil and our environment?
Well, high levels of aluminum apparently can make it very difficult for plants to grow and take up water. The large scale issue with solar radiation management is they admit that it causes drought. And it was stepped up heavily in 2013 and 14. The spraying was nonstop. And we had a very serious drought. So, it really begs the question, what on earth is going on? The trees, I started to record trees dying all over Nevada County. I started taking pictures of them. I would examine them. And before we went into that really, really dire drought of 2000, these past few months, I saw those trees begin to decline. And I even called our government agency and I said, I think I know what's going on with the trees. This was the summer of 2013. And when I told them about the spraying and the testing that I was doing, it was like, their reaction was sort of like, oh my goodness, is that what this is? They practically said that to me, but then they wouldn't do anything further. They just will not step, and no one will step any further. Everybody is afraid to challenge anything the government or the military might be doing, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I find it really shocking now because I think more now than ever people are starting to distrust our government and realize a lot of things that they do it's harmful, it's not good for our planet and the people that inhabit it.
But
so that's
so
why
afraid.
I'm thinking this may be a growing issue, like maybe when you peel just a little bit of the curtain back, maybe it'll start to resonate with people.
It's beginning to.
Yeah.
Today, a meme started going around where someone from the Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, stepped forward. His name is on there and everything, and he said, this is real. This is a real issue, and I was involved in it, and they were breathing down my neck heavily every time I would make a move, and it's compartmentalized so that only, one person only knows a little piece of the puzzle. And that's how it's been handled from what everybody can figure out.
Well, I'm guessing it is a puzzle. That's why it's so hard to get people on board with this.
Yeah, it certainly is.
you have to work years and years to figure this out, you know, and if you're not, the government's not telling you anything and the information isn't getting leaked out, you
And
know,
some of
it's
the people
hard
in the
to,
government don't even know what's going on. That's
Yeah.
the thing. We went to the EPA, the federal EPA, in San Francisco in 2015. We arranged a meeting. I just became so disgusted with what was going on in the air that I called them, and I finally one day I said, look, I need to talk to somebody beyond this wall of people you have telling us everything is okay. And so they put me through, and we did a protest in front of EPA. And during that protest, somebody took me aside and said, we're going to arrange a meeting. We're going to let you come. And so we took 6 people there. And the air quality director and the deputy director of Region 9 EPA, this is federal level, the air quality director was looking at our pictures, and she really had a look on her face that seemed like she was very upset by what she was looking at, like it was all new to her. And you know, I had done everything from taking pictures of saplings that I grew in my house in filtered air, and then took pictures of the ones growing out in the yard, and the difference was unbelievable. So she's looking through all this stuff, and I said, you look concerned. And she said, I am. I have a small child. And you could see that she knew nothing about what was going on, but what do people like that do? I'm not even sure the deputy director knew anything about what was going on. But the problem is that they said that they can't fund a study on it without somebody from Congress initiating and funding that study, you know, without giving them, allocating the funds. And the entity that's actually responsible for it, through many phone calls I found out, and contacts from Barbara Boxer's office, it's the Senate Committee for Environment and Public Works. They oversee EPA, and they are specifically responsible for initiating and allocating funds for a study like this, to, you know, when there's a concern like this. And Barbara Boxer's office gave me a contact, the very person that I should have been able to contact, and he would not respond. I emailed, I even had our congressman, our U.S. congressman, send a letter to him asking him to respond to me, and he still wouldn't. So there's something is going on.
do we have any idea where the money for all this is coming from? You know, what agency is overseeing this?
Well, it's military. There's no doubt that the military is heavily involved in this.
And we know there's no lack of funding there.
Right, that's a lot of it. But even as far as private enterprise is concerned, David Keith, Harvard's geoengineering scientist David Keith, loves to say over and over again when he's talking about this proposal, he likes to say how incredibly cheap this is going to be in comparison, you know, with the effects of climate change. Or he doesn't even usually use a comparison. He just loves to say how cheap it's going to be, as if that's supposed to be appealing to us somehow, that it's going to be cheaper to do that than to deal with climate change in the face. And I understand, you know, I really do understand that we have an energy infrastructure that is not going to allow us to make a transition quickly and carefully.
True.
However, I have tapes, I have cassette tapes from a meeting that took place in 1994, where they were discussing using solar radiation management then. And the people, one of the men in that who did some of the talking was from one of our national academies, and he has ties to he's actually on the board of some nonprofit agencies that are affiliated, that are funded by fossil fuel companies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And he also used to work for the, he was the assistant to the chief of the Air Force. So in '94, if they recognized that there was such a problem that they were talking about dimming the sun, what happened in that interim? Why? And even now, if it's so bad, if climate change and our climate issues are so bad that we've had to resort to this, why is the president not on television, you know, saying, we absolutely, this is what we've resorted to, or this is what we're going to resort to, we have to change something and we have to do it quickly?
Well, I think it has to do with greed, for one thing. The oil companies pretty much run the world, and everybody now, we're all on board with trying to stamp out fossil fuels. So of course they have a big stake in this.
Exactly.
So that makes perfect sense to me. Anything that can mess up, you know, their pocketbooks is gonna come with some resistance. And all we can do is, we can fight it from two different ends. We're getting somewhere with the divesting of fossil fuels, and but we also need to look at what's going on. If they're putting stuff in our skies and they're trying to manipulate the weather, then we have a bigger problem than just worrying about what the government may or may not be doing.
Right, and the thing is, that you've hit the nail on the head with the fossil fuel companies, and it's not just them. I mean, we have companies that have moved into countries like China to do their manufacturing. They no longer have to worry about the kinds of regulations that we have in this country for their pollution, so they're going to keep on cranking it out. So they've got everything to lose. The airline companies have everything to lose, because if we've got to stop pumping CO2 in the atmosphere, they can't keep growing at the rate that they expect to be growing over the next few years. Mm-hmm.
It's a very complicated issue on many fronts, but keep up the good work. If somebody would want to contact you or get more information about your awareness group, what can they do?
Well, the first thing is, please, we have this event happening on the 13th of January from 10 to 3 at the Capitol on the North Steps. Okay. And we need people to show up for that, because if you come to that, we are going to have a table set up where people can find each other and create their own groups. We've got 11 groups that formed a coalition so that we can bring people from all over the state, and everybody can get involved, and everybody can have a say in what we're doing, in how we're putting this together. So we've been working really well over the past few weeks to put this event together. We have some performers coming. We have many speakers coming. And we're going to have a table where people can get together with groups who are already in existence, the 11 groups that are down in the bottom corner. And we also have, we're going to have the ability for people to form their own groups in areas that we don't have anybody. And they can become part of this coalition, because when we organize and when we coordinate and we overcome our differences and we all work together, we can make a difference.
Numbers make a big difference.
Numbers make a big, big difference. And the number of people who show up on those steps on the 13th of January, it's going to say something to our legislators, because we need them. We need our state legislators behind us saying, you know what, we don't want California droughted out for this. We want honesty here. And we have a number of legislators who don't even believe that climate change is a real issue. So why should they just, people like that need to say, okay, so if climate change is such a big issue, then why are you doing this? And everybody needs to be asking questions and getting some honest answers. Yeah. And then we have other people who do believe climate change is an issue. And if that's the issue, they should be out there saying, okay, so do we want to ruin the climate even, or ruin the environment even more? I mean, everybody needs to be raising their voices and asking big questions.
I really hope that anybody that has any interest in this or is curious to come on out, and there should be a lot of information out there for people to see and get, and just to learn about this and where this is all coming from. Again, we have your websites up online there. People can, check it out.
And geoengineeringwatch.org, that's a main website that people go to from all over the world. Dane Wigington has been leading the fight in this for such a long time. He's one of the main people who's been working relentlessly to expose what's happening. And there's a tremendous amount of good, credible data on there for people to look at. On the bottom website, Worldview Climate Engineering, that one is where I basically, in the beginning, in 2013, started putting up, I put a slideshow together so people could see this, and then I started collecting information, and that's where I put my water tests and pictures of what my ponds look like, and where I started documenting. I can look out over the valley, the Sacramento Valley from where I live, and I started to see this stuff settling. And you'd see all the striping up above, but then you'd see all this stuff hanging. And I would check the humidity levels, they'd be very low. So I have a slideshow of that progression over a period of a year. And plant life, what I documented with plant life. It's all on that Worldview site, along with some stuff from other people in other places who've been very concerned about what's going on.
Well, ever since I had discussed this with Kathy, early on. I even started looking up in the sky and I mean, sometimes you're amazed, like whoever would think to look up and just see stuff, and now it'd start questioning what we're seeing. I think that's the thing, is we have to, whether you believe it or you don't, think about the possibility of it.
Yeah,
And,
it's way more than a possibility, though. I mean, for example, just before Thanksgiving, during Thanksgiving weekend, that's the most heavily traveled weekend of the whole year.
Right.
There were no planes. I on a spray day, I see a plane every 5-10 minutes. It's ridiculous. And then, what's sprayed out, then it spreads out, then the day is white. And I watch the progression. We see these rings around the sun all the time now. They're supposed to be highly unusual. But on Thanksgiving, the day before, and then the days just after, there was nothing. There were no planes. I saw maybe 3 planes over the entire weekend, and nothing was coming out of them.
Well, it looks like we're wrapped up, but I'm so happy to have you here
thank you.
and educate me and hopefully our viewers, and hopefully we'll get some people out to check out the material.
I hope
the,
so.
At the
I
Capitol.
really hope to see a lot of people there.
I mean, this needs to be further investigated.
It does.
Absolutely.
And we really need to all get together and demand that our state government stand up for us and do the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, and just get one politician, and that's a start.
That's right.
So
Somebody
we'll have to work on that end,
legislation,
and that's the way you can make change. I don't know of any other way to do it. We can fight in the streets, but it doesn't have a good effect. It doesn't. So we need to do it with our lawmakers, and hopefully they'll listen and they'll hear.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Hey, ciao.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of tongue-tied.
Okay.